we started just talking more about money, and that's really taboo, right? Because money's weird and oh no, but it's not once you realize what it can do.
Hello and welcome to the Neighborhood Money Podcast, a video podcast here to help you grow your financial knowledge and build a life you deserve. If you're new here in the neighborhood, this podcast really focuses on providing you with the knowledge that can help you take control of your money and truly start to build wealth. My name is Kevin Stackpool, and that fella on the other side of the screen is my co-host, Andrew Norrie. Drew,
Hello.
Happy New Year. It's 2022. It's really good to be back in the neighborhood studio chatting with you, and we've got a really exciting show today for our listeners.
I'm very excited for this episode. The person we will be having a conversation with is actually my cousin, and he has started this financial coaching business with him and his wife, and I've been following them for like the last year or two, and I've really liked what they've had to say. And when Kevin and I have been talking about maybe doing more interviews in this year of 2022, he was one of the first people that came to my mind. It was him and a couple other people from school. And so I'm very excited to be able to have him on, and I actually haven't chatted with him in quite some time. So it's going to be great catching up with him.
And they have such a fantastic story as they worked a financial plan together as a couple, got out of debt, and now are helping others do the same. And so excited to get going and for you guys to listen in to our conversation with Mike from Team Krueger Financial Coaching. But one more thing before we get into the interview and the rest of the episode. This week, we do want to introduce a new segment into the podcast, and we're going to call it the Money Minute. And it's really going to be a 60 seconds, Drew. We're going to challenge ourselves, a 60-second segment just around any type of financial topic, whether that's what's a 401k, what's an index fund, how do you invest, really anything under the sun, trying to fit it in within that 1 minute.
Kevin and I were talking, and since we've been doing these interviews, or we've done one and this will be the second, and we want to continue to do a few more in the future, but what we want to do is not sell anybody else short on getting some financial information out of this podcast. So we want to be able to even know if we have conversations with people and they can pass on some information. Here at the Neighborhood Money Podcast, we want to be able to pass on some information as well, financially and otherwise. So,
hey, Drew, but you know what we're not going to forget to do?
What's that?
We're going to keep the trivia rolling. Let's go.
Again, this week we have 2 trivia questions, and the first question is, 80% of Americans have at least one credit card in their pocket. What percent of American households carry credit card debt? Second question is, in 1991, Hulk Hogan took down The Undertaker at This Tuesday in Texas, in San Antonio at the Freeman Coliseum, to become the WWF champion. This wasn't the first time he had become champion. How many WWF champion titles did this give Hogan in his career?
All right, neighbors, let's listen to our conversation with Mike from Team Krueger Financial Coaching. Joining us this week in the neighborhood, all the way across the Pacific Ocean, is Mike from Team Krueger Financial Coaching. Mike, how's it going?
It's going really good, guys. Thanks for having me. How are you?
We're doing good. And for everybody out there, Mike isn't just a stranger here in the neighborhood. He's actually my cousin.
From our understanding, you're over in Japan and you're actually stationed over there. Is that right?
Yeah, I am. So I'm active duty in the Marine Corps. And my family, my wife Ellie and I and our 2 daughters, we moved here in June of 2020, so just about 18 months ago. We moved all the way to Okinawa, Japan, which is a little island south of mainland Japan, where you think of like Tokyo and all the other big cities. This is just a little island down here in the Pacific. So yeah, it's a beautiful place, and it's really been a fun time the last year and a half.
Any huge adjustments you've had to make since being over there?
Ooh, yeah, there's been a couple.
Really? I would have thought it just been seamless,
Yeah, just a walk in the park. Well, it's I would say one of the biggest adjustments, and this may sound weird, is like this house that we're living in is in the last going on 6 years now has been the longest place we've lived in. We've moved, I think, every year for whether it was by our own choice, renting places or through the military on orders. I think in the last 5 years before we came here, we've moved like 6 times. So
Oh my gosh.
it's not, yeah, it's pretty nuts. So it's probably making us kind of subconsciously stir crazy because we haven't been in a place so long.
Yeah, just itching.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. Do we have to
Yeah. It's true. Idle hands. But no, I think one of the challenges definitely was obviously you're in a foreign country, and I would say the host nation here has been nothing but just completely accommodating and generous. It's really really surreal, the length they will go. But with that being, there's language barriers, things like that.
Sure.
But just not being able to be, I think, home, help with little kids, stuff like that, seeing grandparents. It's been a pretty challenging endeavor to endure. So I would say that's probably one of the bigger challenges we faced. Obviously, we're 15 hours ahead, so trying to coordinate stuff is usually early hour mornings or late at night for the States time. But it's been all in all, it's been really well. I don't have any complaints about it.
Well, Mike, two things I got here is that, Japan is actually the number one place on my bucket list to visit. So I might have to get in connection with you after this to see, what exactly I need to go see when I'm over there. And then secondly, I just want to say before we get started here, thanks so much for your service. Drew and I really support all our military members. So we really appreciate all that you're doing overseas to help protect this country. But Mike, let's get into it here. So you and your wife, Ellie, actually run Team Krueger Financial Coaching. And, the interesting thing about your story is that the two of you haven't always been good with your money together. By the sounds of it, it really sounds like you guys were kind of living different financial lives. But there must have been some moment in your guys' past, kind of like that big wake up moment I think everyone has when they start to get into this kind of stuff that led you down the path to really being better with your money management skills and ultimately helping you take control of your money and get out of debt. What was that moment for the two of you?
Yeah, so that's you're 100% spot on. It was a $2 cup of coffee.
Okay.
Quite honestly, and I can kind of give the backstory, but yeah, it was. I think you're right. When you won't make a change in life, whether it be financial, fitness, whatever goals you have, until I think you hit the aha moment where your eyes are really opened, and you just you kind of make the ultimatum right there and say, hey, this is enough. So yeah, Ellie and I we did come from kind of separate backgrounds from when we met. So we met in college, but then we weren't together. We weren't dating in college, and we went our separate ways. Obviously, I went to the military, and she was down in Florida for a little bit. But we reconnected in life, and at this time, I had just basically come off a deployment on a MEU, and so I was able to kind of just put away a lot of money because there was nothing to spend on. I was on a boat all the time. Mm-hmm. And so, finance has kind of always been interesting to me because there's just so many different views and perspectives you can take on it. Mm-hmm. And so we rekindled, we got together. I ended up getting a job in Florida with the military. And we moved out to Florida. I moved because Ellie was there. I moved out to Florida from California. We were engaged, newly pregnant, and okay. We were just, we were late 20s, didn't have a really, I wouldn't say a care in the world, but maybe a naiveness to just life. And so making, I think at that time, I think I was making maybe $60,000 a year. Nothing mind blowing, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but we didn't really perceive a threat of, hey, we can't do anything. So we had enough to do whatever we wanted to, right? We didn't have a care in the world, kind of. Or so we thought, because one day, and the military, as you probably know, is, you're getting paid every 2 weeks, and it's very, very stable. You know exactly what you're going to get paid, forecasted. I mean, it is like to the penny almost. And so you can, it's really good for planning and stuff like that. But you know, so every, you know, first and the 15th you're obviously paid, and people usually run into problems right before that pay period because they spend all their money, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I remember going to work one day, and I stopped to get a cup of coffee, and this was like, I don't know, some random Tuesday. It wasn't like anything earth-shattering. It wasn't the end of the month. It wasn't the mid of the month. It was just a random Tuesday. And I go to buy this cup of coffee. It was $2.04, and I gave the attendant the debit card, and she's like, "I'm sorry, it didn't go through." And I was like, "Holy moly!" Like,
Yeah.
And so my initially, I was so embarrassed, and I was like, "Oh, I must be a new card." Like, you just make up all these excuses, right?
Right,
New
right.
card, or someone stole my identity, just whatever. And I immediately call Ellie. I'm like, "Hey, did we move money, or like what's going on?" She's like, "No." I was like, "Okay, well, our debit, we don't have $2 to our name in our debit account." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And so that moment, after that phone call, after I hung up, I still had like a 10-minute drive to work. I was just like, today is a day that never again will this happen to me. Never again will I not have any idea of where my money's at, because as we started peeling layers back, we totally had no clue what we were spending our money on, where it was going, if it was working for us. We were totally oblivious, and we realized we had financed literally everything in our lives: our car, our furniture, clothes, our dog, like family loans, like just everything. We just living normalcy, right? Because a week before, if you were talking to me, I was like, "Oh, everything's great. There's nothing going on, nothing to worry about." And so we were just oblivious. So the aha moment for me was that $2 cup of coffee, and it really started changing. It 100% pivoted our life, because we then decided that we were going to get out of debt, especially with having our first child on the way. We're like, we can't do this the way we've been doing it.
So when you had that dollar amount that was denied, and then you got in your car and you said, "I'm going to change today," what was your next steps? Was it going on to YouTube? Was it Googling? Is there somebody you've heard through a friend? How did that go?
Yeah. So, I think all the above, to be honest, Drew. I think intellectual curiosity is huge. And that's, if you're not, people say, "Oh, if you're not learning, you're dying." But I really do believe that there's so much white noise out there that you can easily just kind of fall into tune and in step with whatever you're being, I don't want to say fed, but whatever you're being kind of pushed. And so if you don't look it up for yourself, you can really get into some slippery slopes.
Oh yeah.
But I think for us, the first step, we called like a lifetime out. Like, we need to just take a knee and like kind of recollect and figure out where we're at. And so, we started just talking more about money, and that's really taboo, right? Because money's weird, and oh no, but it's not once you realize what it can do. But yeah, I would say through kind of just intellectual curiosity, getting out of debt. And I think the debt guru is Dave Ramsey. At least our generation, he's helped millions upon millions of people get out of debt. And so, and we've all heard of him.
Yep.
Ellie and I had heard of him, and we knew people who had heard of him. And so we just kind of started getting plugged into that, just to kind of put our feet, our toes in the water and say, okay, what's this all about? There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a greener pasture somewhere. So yeah, I would just say intellectual curiosity, and just kind of more or less stumbling our way through it, learning our way through it. And I think that's probably one of the best things I could sum it up to in that.
Mike, my wife Hannah and I, we're also Dave Ramsey babies, right, as he likes to call them. We were actually in a considerable amount of debt as well. How did you and Ellie, take that next step on getting better communicated amongst each other to really tackle, the amount of debt that you guys had out? Are there any tips that you guys had, looking back, that you could share?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think the first is just we had to be honest with each other, and we had to really think about, like, what are we trying to do here? instead of like letting life happen to us and just kind of getting pushed and back with the waves, right? Like we wanted to kind of set the sail and like let the wind, like be very particular in which way we wanted to go. And so that's kind of just all by goal setting and honestly making a priority to like sit down and have a conversation. That was probably the hardest step. But it was the most important step because it's the very first, layer in the foundation, if you will. That's literally the first thing we did. I think that weekend or even that day, we just kind of like, okay, we got to figure this out, and we got to come up with not like a super succinct plan, but we just need a better direction. So we just kind of forced the conversation, quite honestly.
Was one of you more into money than the other? As if like somebody like, was Ellie really good with money and say maybe you weren't, and then it was a miscommunication, or is it both of you just kind of were just going along with it and you're like, we should really take a hard look? Or like both of you were really money mindful before that?
Yeah, I would say we were both pretty ignorant, quite honestly. I mean, I think having money versus being smart with money are two very different things. Regardless if you're in debt or if, coming into our marriage, if someone was bringing debt in, and somebody had, a cash cow sitting or a savings sitting, regardless, there was never a conversation of like, hey, what should we practically do with this stuff? We were both ignorant to the fact of like what we should be doing. I think I was maybe a little more in tune with like the cents around dollars, and Ellie was maybe more in tune with dollars and cents, right? But there was never somebody that was weighing down the team. It was it was a joint effort, 100%. But that was great because we were both able to be bought in, and I think a lot of people run into the problem, especially in marriage, is there's a lot of like finger pointing, and we're always quick to look back in the rearview mirror and see, hey, I'm just going to focus on what I came from. I'm never going to focus forward in the windshield. And it's just like, oh, this is why we can't have X, Y, and Z. And because of you do this, and this. And it's like, there's got to be some give and take here. So to answer your question, we were both ignorant.
Okay.
But it was really mind-opening actually having the discussion, because it allowed us to, list both of our personal goals, right? Like, hey, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be in 3 months, 6 months, whatever? And then where do we want us to be in 3 or 6 months? And you see which ones match up and marry up, and you see which ones are kind of, maybe now they're less prioritized, right? They're lower on the priority list because they're not what the team is trying to accomplish. That's just how we approach it.
Yep.
We approach it as a team,
That's really interesting. You guys taking, your individual approach on like your next 6 months, but then you guys marry that together with the team approach and being able to use a team and prioritize that way, but then also not really forget what each of you individually want to achieve. But I know, Mike, you and Ellie, through your coaching, you guys really talk a lot about the importance of creating a budget and living within your means. But, one of the biggest roadblocks for people is the word budget, as it's seen as something that's really restrictive. And it's, it's that big thing that's saying, no, you can't do something, right? But that's not how you guys really view it. How do you guys teach people to not only just get on a budget, but really to enjoy being on a budget?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It's a great point. I think if you don't enjoy, I always tell people this, if you don't enjoy the journey, that you're just not going to do it. So you have to make it enjoyable. A budget to me is just synonymous with plan. Like, what are you planning to do with this money? I think what I often see with working with people is, an exercise we have them do is fill out monthly expenditures for the last, whether it be 30 days or 90 days. Where did your money go? Like, look at your actual bank statements. Not like, oh, I think I did this. Like, actually, what's the proof?
Yep.
And people will always say, well, I had no idea I was spending X amount on this. And I'm like, okay, so what if you just flipped the narrative and said, Oh, I had no idea I was spending this much money going out to eat. Okay, so let's start the new month and say, how much money do you want to spend going out to eat this month?
Yep.
And just kind of flipping that narrative and challenging the perspective. I think, just by doing something like that, it creates ownership, and now it's like the reins are kind of back in your hands, and now it's your plan, and you can give power to people to create their own plan. So when we're talking like how to create a budget, it's what are your goals, and then let your goals drive your decision making with money, because money is just a tool. I view it just as a tool. We as people pack a ton of emotion into it, whether it's how we were raised, significant events, or myths that we believe. We just bring so much drama to the thing. It's literally just a tool. It can get you X, Y, or Z. Your goals and your behavior is what's going to end up channeling how you're going to use that tool. So I always try to tell people, hey, what do you want to do? Like, what are your goals? Oh, I want to get out of debt. Okay.
Yep.
How are you planning on doing that? How much do you want to get out of debt? Okay, you're spending $300 going out to eat. What if you cut that in half? You don't have to stop doing completely, right?
Sure.
Because if you don't enjoy the journey, you're not going to do it. But what if you cut it in half, and you sent that other 150 to pay off an extra 150 in whatever balance? And it's just, you can see through time and like practice, it kind of clicks. But I think if you just have to use that budget or that plan as a weapon, honestly. And so as you attack the month, you can use it. And yeah, it's going to go sideways some days, but it's like it's like bumper bowling, right? It's the budget, the plan is like putting the bumpers on the lane, and instead of throwing a gutter, all right, it bounces off there wickedly and it hits one pin. Sweet, you still hit a pin. You didn't get a zero.
I really like that analogy. I think it's really important to say going further, those pins are your goals. You put up those guardrails so that you don't throw a zero, but you're really focused on that long term, trying to, whether it's pay off debt, whether it's down payment on a house, whatever it might be. Having children, putting kids through college, it's important to really have that budget, being that plan that you tell your money where it can go and what it can do. Now, Mike, one thing I really like that you guys say is, you say that talking with your partner shouldn't be weird. And I really like that catchphrase. I think it's really interesting because it is so weird for people. It's really hard to actually talk with your partner or with anyone really in general about having those money conversations. And you guys talk about how it actually can be fun. How do you get couples that are hesitant to really start talking about money? How do you get them? What are some tips that you can share with us around how you get them to start talking about money, but also how to have fun with it?
Yeah, so we call it the budget committee meeting, right? It might sound super lame, but I'm telling you, it is life changing. It is absolutely life changing. And so what it is, it's just like you're gonna take. I always suggest you take an hour out of your month, right? So I'm looking for 1 hour out of 30 days to just dedicate uninterrupted time to sit down with your significant other, your spouse, your partner, whoever, and if you're single, just with yourself, and say, okay, how am I going to prepare for this next month coming up with the income that we're going to make, right? Like, what are we going to do with this? And what ends up happening is you have this meeting, we always suggest probably a week before the next month starts. So you're already ahead, because what ends up happening is we only run into issues in the middle of the month when it's tight or we don't have money, and then we do the finger pointing again because it's already too late. We are too far gone to try to kind of circumvent and get anything back. So we've already lost it. But if you have a meeting, if you have this meeting a week before the month starts, it's like, okay, this is how we're going to go through this month. And you come there with zero expectations, zero agenda, which I had to learn kind of the humble way. But you come with a kind of a listen first approach, and you let your goals be put on the table, right? There's no finger pointing. There's no criticizing. It is there to just prepare for the next month. And that is true and true. That is the way that it happens. There's no magic formula. There's no magic thing. It's just you have to have the conversation. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the conversation, it's never gonna come to fruition.
So it sounds like with your budget, you're turning the finger pointing into pats on the back. Almost.
That's right.
You don't want to be pointing fingers at the end of the
right.
month. You're going to be patting each other on the back.
No, and it's true. It's 100% true. And you just have to give a lot of grace. You got to give a lot of grace.
So then it was, once your guys' budgets were, you talk with your spouse and you kind of get your budgets together. For your guys' next goals, was it always the canceling debt, or was it trying to put money towards retirement or adding in extra income to your household?
Yeah, so when we first started, when we were in debt, I think we had $30,000 that we were in debt with, and we were just like, we want it gone. Because the minute that it's gone, because if everything is the priority, nothing is. And to us, we said, okay, we're going to take this time, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 5 years, we're going to dedicate this amount of time to get out of debt, and we'll worry about catching up with all the other stuff later on. Because what ends up happening is every time you pay off a balance, you're giving yourself a raise, right?
True.
It's like if you have, for example, if you have all your debt payments in a month are $840, right? Car, I don't know what else people spend on student loans, credit card, you name it. I would say that's probably, in our case, a dog. 840 is very quick to come, right? It's very, very quick to get there without even thinking.
Yeah.
Take that over the course of a year, right? That's over $10,000. If your employer came to you and said, hey, I'm going to give you a $10,000 annual raise, would you say, yeah, I'll take that? Or would you say, no, I don't want it? Mm-hmm. Everyone would be like, ooh, I would take it, right? So give yourself the raise. Get all your money back in your pocket, because what ends up happening is if you're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, and you're not focused on, at least for us, if we weren't focused on getting out of debt, and we're trying to do the savings and this and that and the third, we're just never going to get there because the behavior is never going to change.
Sure.
It was more about behavior change, and that's really what personal finance is. It's just behavior. We think it's all about money and how much you make. It's not. It's about behavior. We are creatures of habit.
You made a comment a little while back there that I kind of want to bring up is you talked about when you start getting together that it sounded like you had to be humbled and you had to put aside your agenda. Was that kind of true when you and Ellie first started having those money conversations? Is at first you started going into those money committee meetings with an agenda, and you kind of had to put that aside?
Oh man, yeah. in a big way. I'm a very visual person, so I like coaching or just learning. I have to watch it or I have to show it, right? I can't read something and not take notes. It just won't go. So for me, I portray that energy. And so I remember we had these little chalkboards, and I would write debt totals, and I would just put them around the house, and Ellie was just like, dude, you cannot keep doing this. It's driving me insane. And in my head, I'm like, oh no, this is perfect. And I'm always coming to these meetings the opposite. I'm like, here's what we gotta do, this. And it's like, I'm trying to dominate the meeting. And it's like, Ellie's not even being heard or has a voice. And it's like, what a travesty, because 4 eyes are better than 2, 2 brains are better than 1. And, struggles bring progress, and past experiences bring perspective. And it's like, why would we cheat the team the opportunity to learn from 2 people and thinking just one person has the best, vision? So that was me, and that was very quickly, honestly, through some tough conversations that we had, something I learned. And so I had to take a huge step back and kind of look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, this isn't the Mike show. This is Team Krueger, right? That's Team Krueger Coaching. That's how it came. But it's this is our life. So we have to be vested in, both of us, because then, like I said, if you don't enjoy the journey, you're not going to do it. If Ellie, in that case, wasn't enjoying the journey, she's not going to be bought in. And just like if I was letting her do it and I wasn't enjoying it, I wouldn't be bought in, so we wouldn't get anywhere.
Right.
So yeah, it was a huge cup of humility that I was drinking constantly. But that's good because I learned a lot through that. I'm grateful for that.
And with your
100%.
budget, you could afford it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The new one, yeah, it was free. Free 99.
Free 99.
So Team Krueger Coaching is where you and Ellie are helping so many people not only just manage their money, but also get out of debt. And I actually looked up last night, and you guys have helped, people get out of over $110,000 worth of debt, which that's a pretty, jaw-dropping number. When you think about all of the people you guys have helped throughout your time coaching, are there any specific things that come to mind that people have done while trying to get out, or when getting out of debt, I suppose, that has made them so successful in the process?
Yeah, so really there's 4 principles that we preach, and honestly, they, I think, are like the drumbeat to this journey. So I think we started this in June of 2020 when we got out here, and we just eclipsed 18 months. And in 18 months, we've helped 25 families and individuals pay off over $400,000 in debt.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And so that's like,
wow.
Yeah, and it's life changing, is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's not like anything that we're doing. It's people taking action, right? Like,
yeah,
we're giving knowledge and we're educating and changing perspective, like challenging perspective. I love doing, especially in the financial realm. But just seeing and hearing people's messages back of like, oh, I never knew this could happen. I never knew this was going to be for me. And thank you so much for doing all this stuff. And it's like, we didn't do anything. We just kind of showed you the road and you drove the car down it. But the biggest principles, is money shouldn't be weird. That's number 1. That goes to like the core of whatever drama you're bringing into your relationship about money. Like, just park it. Let it be left outside and bring new energy into this, because money isn't weird. It's a tool. The second one is every dollar has a home and a purpose. You have to give every dollar a job, or else it's gonna evaporate quicker than it ever was deposited into your account. Let your goals drive your decision making is number 3. So kind of just keeping it back to like, what are your goals? Chase your goals, because if you chase your goals, you're going to accomplish them, right? Like, if you want to get out of debt, make that your thing. Don't try to invest and save and do all this. If you want to get out of debt, then get out of debt. That's the only way you do it. It's the only way you do it. And then the last one, number 4, is put your money to work. Let your money work for you, so you don't always have to work for it. Put your money to work. Yeah, and so those are like the very first foundational things we teach people. We make them get real, and a good thing that we do is we make people get into the weeds, and we ask them, if people were to sign up, we send them some homework, and it's a very like it's not in depth like a scary thing, but it's like, when I was when I had a credit card and a balance, it's like I would just swipe it, and then I would keep the balance. I wouldn't log in until whenever, and it's like kind of keeping the skeleton in the closet. And then I would peer in, and I'd be like, oh, it's not that bad, or ooh, that one really stings, right? It's like always a guessing. Right. So we force people to like really get into the weeds about their numbers, if you will. And then it's like, okay, you're going to now look at your expenses, and you're going to go through your bank statements. And we're forcing people to put attention back on what they're doing. And it's like, what did you learn through this experience, right? It's like kind of teaching and allowing people to discover their habits. Because like I said, we're creatures of habit. You probably all go to the same stores. You buy the same groceries. You go to the same gas station. Like, we all do the same things over and over and over. And so it's just kind of like bringing kind of a newborn education into, or introspective look into yourself and saying, hey, okay, wow, I didn't know I was doing this. But those all match these goals and, these principles that I'm talking about, because now it's like, okay, now that I know what my goals are, I can start letting those be my decision makings or my decision makers. But true, it just money shouldn't be weird, and it all starts with a budget committee meeting, quite honestly. Like being on the same page. If that's the one plug, that's it. You gotta have it. You gotta have the conversation.
Helping families pay off over $400,000 in debt. You guys are changing lives, and you guys are doing it really quickly. So that is so awesome. And
Thanks.
hopefully that you guys can continue to do that, and hopefully our listeners can listen in and hopefully get some of the tips that you guys are sharing or you're sharing here today. But Mike, it's honesty time here in the neighborhood. So we like to ask this question in the interviews that we do. But thinking back or even presently, everyone has kind of that one thing in their life, let's call it a financial vice, if you will, that you continue to buy over time, even if, from time to time, it might make you feel a little bit guilty. What do you have any of these guilty pleasures when you're looking back at your finances?
I'd probably say chicken sandwich from Lawson's, which is like I don't know the equivalent in the States, but it's like a little mini mart. And that's something it's like a Quick Trip in Wisconsin.
Nice.
I would just say
I know these things are a bit overpriced, but damn, are they tasty.
That's right. I would say that's a vice. I don't know. There's definitely some out there. Being on the spot, that's the knee jerk that comes to my mind, which is pretty lame.
I thought it might have been coffee. I wasn't really sure, but
yeah, we definitely are huge coffee people. Yeah, we are definitely huge coffee people.
So each week, Drew and I, talk to each other, and we just share with our listeners what's going on in each of our neighborhood as a way for them to get to know us a little bit better, week by week. So, what's going on over in your neighborhood over in Japan? Where can people go and find out more about Team Krueger and all of the great work that you and Ellie are doing?
So to start, you can find us on Instagram, Team Krueger Coaching. We have a website, teamkruegercoaching.com. We have a YouTube channel. We have a ton of, we're just on social media, right? So I think that's where we put more of our content. And it's a lot of just trying to use content to make people ask a question themselves, right? To kind of challenge their own perspective. So that's where you can find us. That's where we put most of our stuff out there. I would say what we have coming up is we're actually doing our first annual budget committee meeting as open to the public, right? So with the new year, why not get the new year started and learn the process of how to do this stuff? So kind of to your previous questions of like, what are some things you recommend, or what are some of the biggest things that have helped people? It's like, well, this budget committee meeting is it. Like, it is the pinnacle of what we do. And so what we're doing is we're hosting kind of an event that people can purchase tickets to. There's, I think, 22 spots left. Okay. But we're just going to go through what that actually looks like. What do you talk about? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? What are the things you want to get out of that? And it's going to be just a really good time to kind of pressure reset. And especially, with every new year, I think, but that's great. I think it's awesome to have aspirations. It's awesome to have goals, and you should always continue to chase them. But that's kind of what's going on over in Team Krueger world, I guess you could say.
Sure.
In Mike and Ellie's world, we just came back from Tokyo in mainland, and it was beautiful. Okinawa it's a jungle. It's a tropical island, so it very rarely gets below 65 degrees here. Tokyo was like 30. Yeah, Tokyo was like 30, so a huge contrast.
Sure.
But we did that for Christmas. We actually went to Disneyland. That was really fun. Because our oldest daughter is nearly 5, and then our youngest is just a knee knocker and running around. But it was good to see littles having fun. But yeah, that's kind of what we got going on over here.
Well, that 60 degrees is a heck of a lot warmer than the 7 degrees we have going on here in Minnesota right now. Yeah. So I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty jealous of you.
Yeah, I actually, up in Virginia, it snowed quite a bit the last couple of days. And I have a little doorbell that has a video camera on it. And Luckily, I was fortunate enough that my parents were actually shoveling while we were gone, and I had to text them and just say thanks and say, I promise I did not leave Virginia because I knew it was going to be snowing a lot and I didn't want to shovel. So, I mean, if it was 60, 60 degrees, I wouldn't have to be worrying about that.
No, you wouldn't. But 60 probably feels like 7 to us, which is not even fair to say. So I'll take that comment back.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us here today to talk about all that you and Ellie are doing over at Team Krueger. We'll be sure to share all of your information out on our socials, but thank you so much for joining us here today. This was a whole lot of fun, this conversation, getting to know more about you and what all of the fantastic work that you guys are doing to help people take back control of their lives from a money standpoint. And again, thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate all that you do to protect this country. So thank you so much, Mike, for being here.
Yep. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your service. Oh, and for any, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, and for any listeners here that are wondering, because Mike's a day ahead of us, nothing has happened in the future yet. He reassures us.
If it does, you'll be first to know, so tune in. No, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you inviting me on and getting to know more about us, and I would hope to continue to stay in touch with you guys. What you do is awesome. It's such a fresh take, and it's really enlightening, and it's life-giving to people. So kudos to you for starting it, and I'm excited to see how you guys progress.
Wow, Drew, what a great conversation we had with Mike from Team Krueger Financial Coaching. Just, an all around great thing that him and Ellie are doing and helping so many people. I mean, they have helped over 25 families pay off over $400,000 in debt. Just fantastic work. And what a great conversation that we had to have with them.
Absolutely. I've been super energized after this conversation with Mike and Ellie. We spoke with them for a little while after we got done recording, and we probably should have recorded some of it because the conversations kept going on and on. They're so passionate about what they're doing, and it was just all around just very awesome. And I was so happy that we were able to connect with them, being 15 hours difference in us, and it's kind of
different continents.
Yeah, and almost like really kind of short. It wasn't a whole lot of time for us to be able to plan this. So for them to be able to work with us, I'm very, very fortunate. They're awesome, and I hope we can continue to talk with them in the future.
So they talked, a lot about their background, them being so financially not aware of their situation where they couldn't even pay for a $2 cup of coffee. And that moment in time instantly, turn the trajectory of their life, but also their kids' lives. But Drew, out of that whole conversation, what would you say your main takeaways are from the conversation that we had with Mike?
Yeah, kind of to piggyback off what you were just talking about, I think a really huge message during that is Mike and Ellie kept saying that, they had income coming in. They had more than enough to be able to live a good life and like the life they're living, but they kind of were saying they just didn't have a care in the world almost with their money, or were a bit naive, I think was the words they used. And
Right.
I think that's so true with so many of us. I saw myself doing the same things, and sometimes I'll even catch myself doing it sometimes now. But in the past, I've talked about when I just got out of college, you're making some money, and just every dollar you make, you almost just want to spend. And the fact that it was a $2 cup of coffee that turned their whole thought process around and saying, okay, I now have to focus and see where exactly my dollars are going, and seeing where I want my money to be in the future and where I want us to be in the future. And that whole focus on their budget, their canceling debt, and just their goal setting was so huge. And they find a way to take such a big subject and such a overwhelming subject and be able to put it down into small fractions of saying, all right, we're just going to start with the conversation. and then we're just going to record some expenses. And then they just take all these baby steps for you to actually understand where you are.
That intentionality that they really lived with after that moment with that one cup of coffee is really second to none and is very, very impressive. If I was looking for a financial coach in my corner, it would be someone like the Kruegers that had really been kind of at that brink of what the heck is going on, and the way that they just built their plan and they worked on their plan and they were able to get out of debt, and then they were be able to save and invest, and then they were able to pass that information on to others to help them do the same. It's just so incredible, and it's so awesome that there's people out in this world that are trying to do that for others.
It's so great that they want to be able to pass on the knowledge. And it's kind of funny. We were talking with them, and just being curious about things has been huge for them. And I know it's been huge for myself. And I might be speaking for you, but I'm sure curiosity has been huge for you as well.
Absolutely.
But it's fun to go down these rabbit holes, and almost anybody you learn from has had some of these aha moments, and they get to the point where they want to be able to teach other people. You go down this aha moment, it's very humbling. And once you get to that point, you want to learn as much as you can, learn from others. And then because you've learned from others, you want to be able to pass that on. So it's really a cool string of events of people wanting to help other people in this, financial realm or any other type of, informational realm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, their story resonated with me so much in the fact that Hannah and I were also in a lot of debt. We didn't quite have the $2 coffee aha moment, but we had the aha moment of, oh, we're expecting our first son and we've got a ton of student debt still out, and additional car debt on top of that. And that really changed our trajectory of where we were going from a financial standpoint. And we were very similar to Mike and Ellie in the sense that we were making enough money and we were doing things right, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But we still had this huge weight on our shoulders. And, the thing, Drew, that I really, really liked about Mike's message and really resonates with me and probably a lot of couples is the focus that they put on having conversations as a couple, and that really being the main point in their teaching, the sense that you've got to have those money conversations, whether it's with your spouse or with your partner, even if you're single, having that accountability partner to speak to keep you on track
Yeah.
is so key. And talking from someone that has a wife, has a partner in life, was so key for us to get on the same page, because you can do things two separate ways, but once you come together and you really define what that goal is and what that long-term goal is, that's going to take a lot of effort to get to. It's just so powerful to combine forces and to get there. And I just absolutely love that message and that approach that the Kruegers take.
Have you ever wondered what a market-wide circuit breaker is? These market-wide circuit breakers were started in 1988, and this was because of the 1987 stock market crash, where it crashed almost 22.6% in one day. This was also known as Black Monday. So what these do is there's 3 levels to worry about. The first level is 7% decrease from the previous day close, and that will stop trading for 15 minutes. So that's no buying or selling. The second level is going to be at 13%, and this is going to be another 15-minute halt. And the third one is a 20% decrease, and this means no trading the rest of the day. There are no circuit breakers after 3:25 Eastern Time. The latest circuit breaker you might have heard about was back in March in 2020. These circuit breakers can also be caused due to technical problems or regulatory problems, and that's a circuit breaker.
Drew, nice job on that first Money in a Minute for the Neighborhood Money podcast. I'm pretty impressed. You nailed it on your first attempt. Wow, what can I say?
Well, I have to say, my veins are made of ice, I guess. Unless you look in editing, then you'll see maybe not so. Couple tries, maybe.
All right,
couple
Drew,
tries.
read us our trivia question here, and let's get some answers for our neighbors.
All right, let's recap. the first trivia question. 80% of Americans have at least one credit card in their pocket. What percent of American households carry credit card debt? And the answer is
45% of American households have credit card debt.
Interesting. I wonder if that's taken everybody, let's say, at least one credit card. That's pretty crazy. I thought that was going to be a lot higher, to be honest with you. I thought almost everybody's going to be carrying.
Right, especially like if you think about like here in the neighborhood, that means almost 50% of our listeners potentially have credit card debt. So if that's you, it's definitely something that you want to decrease out of your life, because credit card debt pays or has such high interest rates on a month-to-month and an annual basis. So get that credit card debt out of your life.
It'll really eat into your pocket for sure. And now for the second trivia question. In 1991, Hulk Hogan took down The Undertaker at This Tuesday in Texas, in San Antonio at the Freeman Coliseum to become a WWF champion. This wasn't the first time he had become champion. How many WWF champion titles did this give Hogan in his career?
It was his fourth. All right, man. What the heck has been going on over in the Drew Norrie neighborhood?
Well, we were talking about last episode how holidays were in the swing of things. It's kind of been the same thing this week. It was a Christmas Eve. We went up to my wife's mom's for their lake place, so that was awesome. Then we went to my parents for Christmas Day, and then went to my wife's dad's down in the Twin Cities, so kind of near you in a way, but not really. And we've been there. And we were there for a couple days, so it's pretty nice to be able to go and see all of the family. There's a lot of traveling. I have to say, though, I'm pretty excited to sleep in my own bed tonight.
That is the best part about traveling, is when you finally get to go home and sleep in, or just even lay down in your own bed.
Yeah, the unpacking of stuff wasn't super fun, but
it never is.
But sleeping in the bed is going to be pretty nice. And if we have enough time, if the kid goes down, he might already be sleeping right now, but if he is, I'm hoping we can watch and catch up on Yellowstone, because I've been quite into Yellowstone lately. So we'll catch up hopefully tonight or tomorrow, and then it will be back on Sunday. So I'm pretty excited.
I've never heard of Yellowstone.
Oh my gosh.
If I'm going to be honest.
You gotta get into it. It's like a Western TV series. Kevin Costner's in it. It's awesome. I can't believe you haven't heard about it. That's embarrassing.
I'm clueless, I guess.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised I admitted that on camera here in the neighborhood. Well, but now you know.
Now you know. You'll get into it. You'll love it.
We'll see.
Anything in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this last holiday break, and one thing that came to mind was when people get a lot of money. So say you get gifted a lot of money, or, over the course of many gifts, you get a lot of money. And, money is a very common thing to get around this time of year. One, because it's really easy to give. It does allow other people to, spend it how they want. But what can you actually do with that money outside of just going and spending it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of thinking about, okay, well, if I got this big chunk of money, what could I actually do with it, right? You've got some options, and those being you could put it away for retirement. But one thing to think about there is if you want to put it in, say, like a Roth IRA, you can only do that if you have earned income. So you got to be careful there. But you can always open up a brokerage account if you're over the age of 18. And that really allows you access to the market. It's such a great time to reflect and say, hey, I've got, I'm very fortunate. I potentially maybe got a good chunk of change. Let me put it towards my future so that I'm not just spending it now, but I can really focus in on that compound interest and let it grow, for the next 10, 20, 30, whenever I actually need it, years. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about a lot. I may or may not have that in my personal life.
That's why, man, I thought you were going to be going on saying, so anyways, I got this big generous gift and I'm going to be putting it towards this. But what's been going on in your neighborhood is you've just been thinking. You've been thinking a lot because
I've been thinking, right? Yeah. Been very fortunate this past holiday season. I've our family has gotten a good chunk of change. And I know other people have too. So I just wanted to throw that out there that if you do get that good chunk of money, there's good ways to put it to use. Like Mike and Ellie talk about paying off debt. If you're in school, use it towards school
So what's your
or
thought?
invest it for your future.
What's your thought that you're going to do in your neighborhood?
In my
with the
neighborhood,
chunk?
that baby is going right into investments, and it is just going to sit and grow for the
Just a normal brokerage.
who knows
Just
how
a normal
long.
brokerage account.
More than likely, yep.
Okay.
More than likely.
Well, that's awesome. It's pretty interesting stuff there. So, any listeners out there got a good chunk of change, think about where you want to put that money. Make sure that it's a gift that keeps giving.
Right. Even if it's to yourself, it can be a gift that keeps giving.
Absolutely. You don't want to get something now that depreciates fast. Like, who wants a fancy car? That's worth nothing.
Right.
In no time. Well, there's another segment of what's going on in your neighborhood for the Neighborhood Money Podcast. We appreciate everybody listening to, again, another episode, and very special because it's the first episode of 2022. We had a great conversation in this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, got a lot out of it. We appreciate, a nice thumbs up, subscribe if you really did enjoy this. If you want to see some more people come on to the podcast, send them our way. We'd love to have them on the podcast. That's for sure. And with all of that stuff said and considered, we want to say thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week in the neighborhood.
This is the Money Minute. This, that Money Minute. La, 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 la.